It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Well, my friends, November 7th is a very important day, particularly in Schuylkill County. Judicial race is critical. It's important that we put in the right people in judicial positions. Let me just ask you a question. If you Google, liberal judges and conservative judges, I think you'll find that where they have liberal judges, there's a lot of chaos in the cities. Where you find they have conservative judges, you'll find that people are doing what they should be doing. Now, sometimes we wonder, is it important for us to vote for a judicial candidate, such as in Schuylkill County? Well, sometimes liberal judges let bad people free, and they should really be in jail. And then these bad people do bad things again. And sometimes these bad things they do are to your family. Then all of a sudden you wonder why that bad person is out, because you find out a liberal judge let him out or her out. Bill Burke's running for judge in Schuylkill County. He's no stranger. He's in the courtroom 3 to 4 days a week. He's been around for 30-some years. And he's here today to talk about his vision as being a judge in Schuylkill County. Bill, nice to see you again.
Great to see you. Thank you for having me again.
Interesting race.
Very interesting race, yes.
Important, and I just mentioned some of the things as I was looking at different things in the country today and seeing how it's so important, Bill, to put people in there who understand the law, but also understand when you do bad things, you have to be punished for that. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are this. Right now we're seeing problems, as you mentioned, in a lot of urban areas with regard to criminal prosecutions and in some way sentencings. The city of Philadelphia, there's enormous problems down there because it's selective enforcement of the law. And as a conservative, what you do is you enforce the law as it's written, not as you hope it to be or whether you think you have a better outcome. And that would be my job as a judge, to sit as a fair and impartial arbiter of the facts, sit and listen to them. But then when the time came to make a sentence on a criminal defendant, to sentence appropriately the way the legislator wants you to do and what's best for society as well.
It's interesting because when you look at the experience of who's ever running for a judge or any office for that matter, it's important to understand the substance of that person, the background of that person, and like you said, it's sometimes they interpret what they like to interpret, and we've seen that happen in Philadelphia, as you mentioned. What view do you look at?
The view I look at is being an originalist with regard to interpretation of the law and being a strict constructionist. Life would be a lot easier if we were able to do whatever we want, but as a judge, we do what our elected officials basically pass the laws as they are. We're there to enforce the laws that are written by our elected officials, not enforce laws as we wish they were written, and that would be my job as a judge.
It says here that you have proven leadership, okay? And so that sounds good. And then it says protecting families, seniors, etc. Tell me what you've done.
Well, what I've done is, as far as leadership is concerned, I was honored, and I don't use that word lightly, I was honored to serve as the president of the Schuylkill County Bar Association. I was elected twice by my colleagues. I was also elected twice to serve as the vice president of the Schuylkill County Bar Association. I was also the secretary for 2 terms. So I worked in those capacities as leadership with my colleagues. After I finished in the Schuylkill County Bar Association, I continued my activities in the Bar Association with the Pennsylvania Bar Association, the County Conference of Bar Leaders. With regard to that organization, for lack of better terms, it basically fosters and encourages activity within all the county bar associations, all the counties throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I had worked through the steps with regard to that organization. I was elected treasurer of the Pennsylvania Bar Association County Conference Bar Leaders. I had also served as a secretary. I also served as vice president, and eventually I did become the president. And again, that was a post I was honored to have, especially in a statewide organization from a smaller county. That's my leadership. As far as protecting people is concerned, I've been privileged to serve as one of the solicitors or staff attorneys for the Office of Senior Services. I'm a sole practitioner, and I remember when I was hired by a sewer authority in northern Schuylkill County, they said they wanted a sole practitioner because they said you have nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. It's just you, which is the case with me. Since 2012, there have been 180 case filings in the Schuylkill County Prothonotari's office regarding seniors in need. I handled 132 of those, and that's up to August of this year. So I handled 73% of the caseload with regard to protecting seniors as filed in the Schuylkill County Prothonotari's office. Fortunately, some of them we were able to get them in better circumstances, have them taken care of, a better home, a better environment. Unfortunately, with others who can no longer make decisions for themselves, we filed for 76 guardianships and had them placed in the appropriate environment and had either a correct third-party agency or people named as the guardians in that case. So I'm very, very proud of my work with the Office of Senior Services.
In terms, I said, about protecting families, okay, we're under siege, I think, sometimes in this country with the radicals taking over, and I just scratch my head. I've been around a long time, over 6,000 shows. I've interviewed a lot of people like you. Some are, like you, honest and sincere, and some are phonies, okay? And it's sad, because I see that these phonies it's all talk, all right? Protecting the family, seniors are being preyed upon. You're dealing
Yes.
with that all the time. What do you tell the viewers as to why it is so important to look at judicial candidates and see what they're going to be doing?
Well, with regard to a judicial candidate, what you want to look at is the sum of his or her life experience, what they've done in their professional life, what they've done in their personal life. And what I think I bring to the race is what I've done in my professional life is I've been, for lack of better terms, a general practitioner. I have done real estate settlements to help people get in their homes. I've settled estates. But what I've done is to help people in need. And I've done the best I can, and I think I have a proven record of helping people in need. I've been an attorney for 32 years. Whether they're faced with the position of a criminal action against them, or whether they're faced with a position where someone's taking advantage of them, I do the best I can to step in and help those people, and especially our senior citizens, because unfortunately, as time moves on, sometimes you slow down, whether it's your ability to make decisions or your ability to move physically. And they're in need of protection more than anybody else because they're more vulnerable. And in a county like Schuylkill, often your family moves away, unfortunately, and you're left by yourself. So at that point in time, it's up to an organization like the Office of Senior Services to step in in the case where someone lives 2-3 hours away or maybe even the other side of the country. So that is our job with regard to the Office of Senior Services.
Some people who are running for judge, become a judge, you'll hear them saying, I will be tough on crime. I will be tough on, the drug deal. I'll be tough on this. I'll be this, okay? What saying do you have?
Well, my saying is this. We have sentencing guidelines that are passed by the Pennsylvania State Legislature that give us ranges. Now, every case is looked at differently. You have to look and judge every case by its own circumstances. And with regard to sentencing, I think in the case of my professional life and personal life, I know the difference between someone who unfortunately has become hooked on an opiate. I mean, that is my worst nightmare as a parent, that one of my children ever got a taste of that. In some ways, perhaps there's something a little more creative you could do as far as treatment on the outside. But if someone's making their living selling opiates to people in the public, then they have to have the wrath of God come down on them, because they're pushing off something onto addicted people that it's destroying lives. In many ways, people are losing their lives from using what they're selling.
That's so true. That's so true, because some people, they didn't want to become addicted, but because of prescriptions, etc. It's good to know that you have a person who is going to judge you accordingly, and I think you couldn't have put it any better. And sometimes those guidelines, I have always questioned some of the legislative guidelines, when this person should be getting X amount of years and you're only limited as to what you can do. Doesn't that frustrate you sometimes as a lawyer?
It frustrates me, yes. With regard to the guidelines, they're just that. Now, there can be deviation from the guidelines, but you have to explain your deviation. And again, we get back to strict constructionist and being a conservative. It's not my judgment call as to what the guidelines are. It's the elected officials that pass those guidelines and send them to us to apply it.
That's where, again, it's so important that making sure when you're putting these legislators in, that you know who you're putting in.
Correct.
Because you have the turmoil. I mean, when I look at Philadelphia, I actually want to cry. It's such a sad situation. And why does it continue? I don't understand why they continue to want to have these bad people in. It just frustrates me, Bill.
In all honesty, I don't have an answer for that. It makes no sense because these people are routinely returned to office.
Yes.
Routinely returned to office. And with regard to that, it's the democratic process. And it's in the city of Philadelphia for the most part. And with regard to Schuylkill, we're fortunate enough where we have conservative legislators that have adopted a more strict policy with regard to adopting legislation involving sanctioning criminals and what have you. So we're fortunate in this part of the state.
We have compassion for people. Everyone should have an opportunity to grow with their families. But it seems that the families today are under siege, as I should say, because of what's happening with the liberals in our country. And I'm hoping that when we get conservative judges in, things begin to level off. Am I wishing too much here, Bill?
No, you're not wishing too much. With regard to, what occurs, like we had talked about sentencing, there's cases where people make a mistake. And common sense, you make a mistake, perhaps you show a little more compassion to them the first time. But then when it becomes a mistake 2, 3, 4, 5 times, it's not so much a mistake. And at that point in time, the more punitive measures have to kick in. So being a judge is fair, but being a judge is also being just. And when you have a person that's coming into the courtroom 2, 3, 4, 5 times, then it's time to be a little more severe.
Folks, I'm talking to Bill Burke. He's running for judge in Schuylkill County, a Republican, conservative, looking to protect ourselves, particularly when it comes to families and citizens. But you have to look at the past. You have to look at what this person did. And he just told you a lot. We'll come back, he'll tell you a lot more. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Remember, 24/7, SSPTV.com. You can watch all of our shows, YouTube channel, Rumble. November 7th, my friends, very important day in Schuylkill County. There's a judgeship coming up for election. Bill Burke is here today. He's running for judge. It's interesting, my friends, when we did this survey, the Susquehanna Polling and Research Survey, which was a scientific survey, many of the questions you answered, but one of the things that I was very impressed with and I appreciate very much is when they said, why do you watch the Sam Lesante Show? And over 90% of you said, because you trust us and you trust me. And that's important, and that's something that I really appreciate. I try to bring to you information that's important, that affects your lives. I can't tell you how important it is when it comes to judicial matters and legislative matters. And that's why we have these people on. Bill Burke's running for judge. He's a Republican. When you run for judge, you just don't decide to run for judge. You have to talk to your family.
Yes.
That's critical to me, because your family has to be there to support. So what did your wife, Lori, and your children say when you said, hey, I want to run to become a judge?
Well, it was part that, and it was part the other way around. My wife Lori and my kids said, "Hey, why don't you run for judge?"
Oh, interesting.
My children keep up with current events, and recently we had a judicial election, and it was always something that I had wanted to do, but then the decision was made because my wife, my son, and my daughter wanted me to do it. And we sat down and talked about it. It was a family decision. My wife, very, very supportive. My children, very, very supportive. And I said this at a speech before the Schuylkill County Labor Council. This has been a happy journey for me, simply because it has brought our family close together. And that may sound cliche to some of the folks out there, but it's brought us together where we traveled together. We had some good times together. We argued together, but we were together. And we've been together more, and as a result of this, we became more close. So it's been a family affair, and we've all worked very, very difficult with it. If the whole family's not in, then you don't do it. And the family's all in.
And I think that's great, because when you're going around campaigning and talking to people, your family's there, okay? And I think that says a lot. I mean, that's the way I would look at it. But when when you start putting all these pluses together, don't vote for me because I'm a great family person. Don't vote for me. But you put them all together, and you have a person with substance, and that's what you are, Bill.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And just a small aside, my son, who graduated from Nativity this past spring, he ran for class secretary, and I gave him a speech about sometimes you try to accomplish certain goals in life. If you happen to fall short, don't be angry, don't be bitter, move on. He remembered that speech and gave it back to me about running for judge. He thought it was a good idea I'd run for judge, and he turned 180 degrees on me there when he said, "Hey, Dad, I think you ought to run for judge. You ought to try this. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We're still a family." And that's coming from my own son.
And you see why they say that is because just like when I'm making things, my children, my wife will say, well, because they've seen me live those things. So they've seen you in court. They've seen what you've done. They've seen how many seniors you've done, how many families you've helped, etc. And say, why not put you in a position where you could even do more? That's what I would think, wouldn't you?
Yeah, to me, it's not an entitlement. It's public service, not personal service. It's not a matter of beefing up your resume. It's more a matter of what you can do for the community. And it's the way I was raised by my parents. My father always told me you could do well by being an attorney and helping people and do well by yourself, but remember, you're there for the people. You're not there for your own personal enrichment. And being there as a judge would not be for personal enrichment. It would be there to serve the public. And this campaign has been more or less a lesson for me as to how I could better serve Schuylkill County. And that's what I've learned throughout my campaign.
Speaking of helping people and families, in municipal law, okay, you've done a lot of things, okay? Let's talk about some of the things that you've accomplished there.
Well, with regard to municipal law, that's another instance where my passion lies with the practice of law. Municipal law keeps me out of the house on a regular basis, and we go to council meetings, supervisor meetings, what have you. And there you really get a flavor of what the public is looking for as far as protection from their elected officials. And one of the biggest things that are upsetting the people in Schuylkill County, I grew up in Schuylkill County, and I remember years ago you would see people out in front of their home with a house and a bucket of soap cleaning up their homes, cleaning out their gutters, putting flowers out, is the blight from out-of-county landlords. It's Schuylkill County always had a housing stock where people took pride in ownership. And as a municipal attorney, one of our biggest challenges is dealing with the out-of-town landlord, the out-of-county landlord, with regard to filing citations, with regard to enforcement proceedings and what have you. And that is one of the main concerns of our county. And if I'm fortunate enough to get elected judge of the Court of Common Pleas, it's something that I want to look at as far as protecting our families are concerned with regard to out-of-town landlords, homes that are dilapidated, collapsing, you could see inside of them. So That was one of my focuses as a municipal solicitor.
You know, you bring some quotes of what your dad said and your parents, and you learn things. I'll never forget my father telling me when I was getting involved with politics or whatever, and he said to me, he says, "Butchie, never pretend what you are not," okay? Now, throughout my many years in life, you know, sometimes I try to, and sometimes you fall off the wagon, as they say. It's so important. Remember I said about developing substance?
Correct.
So you took your family, your dad, your mom, and you bring those things to fruition, to what you're going to be all about. Am I correct in saying that?
You're absolutely correct. And one of the things that my father always said to me, he said, you make a mistake or you fall short, I'm always going to be there to pick you up. And he was a World War II veteran. He wasn't an overly emotional person. But then he made the differential. He said, if you don't tell me the truth, I'm going to let you there by yourself and I'm not going to help you. Yeah. So that's basically how I learned right and wrong.
And that's how you develop and you grow up and you bring your family up and, you know, et cetera. And we're not all perfect, as we know, and, you know, that's why there's such thing as confession in the Catholic faith, you know. But I mean, I think it's so important that your family and that what you say, but you've been, everything you're telling me is what you've already done. So it's not something new. I think I'll join this club now because I'm going to run for a Congress or I'm going to run for this, okay. You know, that's when the phonies come in. All of a sudden they're doing things that they never did before. You did them all.
Yeah, well, I was fortunate to have a good family before I was married. I'm fortunate to have a good family when I'm married. But this is not a matter of professional politics for me. This is the first time I've been a candidate, and it would probably be the last time I'm a candidate. I just, in my estimation at this point in time, at my conversations with my friends and my family, that I would be able to bring quite a bit to the table to serve the people of Schuylkill County as a judge.
Well, you know, Bill, I said I've interviewed many people, and I appreciate my viewers. Sometimes they agree or disagree. I'm a pro-life person. I've always made that perfectly clear. But I've always said if you have someone who's pro-choice and wants to come on the show and speak their side, they're welcome to do that, okay? But where I stand, I think you're an honest person. I think you're sincere. I think, you know, when you become judge, I think you're going to do a great job. I wish you the best.
Well, I appreciate it. We're working hard. We feel like the wind's at our back. We're optimistic. But believe it or not, I did run cross country in high school and college. And I found that I ran best when I didn't look behind my shoulder, seeing what the other person was doing, and I ran my hardest towards the finish line. That's what we're going to do.
You certainly are doing that, yeah.
Well, thank you.
Well, throughout the, you know, at least now when I see your billboard or I see your poster or whatever, I could say, oh, that's the guy who did this. That's where I think, that's where billboards come in. But, you know, it blows my mind when I see all these big signs. What the hell do I know about the person, okay? You've been able to do that many months here on our channel and letting people know who you are. So I wish you the best.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. My friends, November 7th, very important. Remember, you live with these things. It's so important, particularly in Schuylkill County when you're looking to vote for a judge. We'll see you next time.